talk about what is happening in the entire consumption space. Trends are very divided. Rural India is doing poor, urban India is doing much better. Luxury is seeing a pent-up demand like never before. Watches, luxury hotels, luxury cars, luxury. Look at the prefix luxury. That category is doing very well. Look at the prefix rural. That category is doing poorly. Why is that? How long will this sustain? Is this a trend which could be a multi-year trend where we are going to be seeing bottom of the pyramid suffering and top of the pyramid continue to add more muscle? Let's take that point forward with Arvind Singhal, Chairman and Managing Director with Technopark Advisors, and let's connect with him. Mr. Singhal, good morning. And Mr. Duggal is also ready. So good morning to both of you. So nice to see both of you. Is it raining in Delhi?
No, not today at least. It's hot and humid.
No, I was being told that every time when you were with Dabur, you would get up in the morning and before you would check up your phone, you would look at the sky and say, "Barish hone wala." Is that true?
Well, that is true partially in the month of July. In the month of April and May, we used to say, "Kitna garmi hai?" Because the hotter the weather, the better our sales of our summer products. So the weather is very important. In winters, we used to gauge the temperature for Chyawanprash sales. So that's something which was almost inbuilt into our DNA.
What is that one thing you do when you get up in the morning, Mr. Singhal? Look at your phone first or look at the sky first?
Actually, ironically, even for me also sky, because unlike Mr. Duggal, our clients' fortunes, and I sit on a board of a particular company which is into consumer durables. So I've been praying for that company that we need hot summer in North. Consumer white goods air conditioners have suffered a lot. So yes, unseasonal weather patterns have a very, very cascading effect on multiple industries and businesses.
So, Mr. Singhal, this year, has the weather pattern really been that unusual? And if yes, do you think this is just a one-year phenomenon? Because all the consumer companies which we've spoken to, they are of the view what you just expressed. Unusual winter, unusual summer, unusual rainfall in the month of March and May has really dampened their sales. Is it true, Mr. Singhal?
I think so too. So, because the consumer behavior, let's put it like this, from a behavioral perspective, I've never understood the logic that if it is very hot, only then somebody will buy an air conditioner or a refrigerator. But the fact of the matter is that people do behave exactly, the temperature is 45 degrees. All of a sudden, they have a need to buy a new refrigerator. The same thing goes in terms of spending for clothing. The moment the weather patterns are slightly off, it is less cold. The winter wear per se, whatever it might be, goes for a toss. So this is something which is a phenomena which probably is more applicable to Indian consumers. And therefore, any kind of a disruption in what is seen as the normal actually ends up disrupting the consumer side of the business. And of course, it leads to a cascading effect in terms of excess inventory somewhere or a shortfall of inventory if the summers, for example, are very, very extreme or the winter is very, very extreme. So this phenomena is becoming more and more pronounced rather than lesser as consumers go for more discretionary spending as opposed to need-based spending.
Okay. Mr. Duggal, let's get in your take, in terms of the outlook, in terms of the demand trends as well, and wanted to just understand how things are shaping up because we sense that there is a recovery coming in for rural growth. Is that something that you're observing as well on ground, and what's the outlook of urban versus rural?
I'll speak about this, the non-discretionary, the staples part of the consumer space. And I think the rural is still stressed. Urban is a little bit better off, but again, in terms of the staples, both seem to be going a bit of a demand issue. The reason is the weather patterns, which were alluded to earlier, that it's been a remarkably mild summer from the point of view, at least northern and western India, which has really taken a toll of the summer products, juices, etc., glucose. They've taken a bit of a pasting. Now we have onset of monsoon, which is at least from North Indian point of view, remarkably early. For the first time in 64 years, you had the monsoon breaking in Mumbai and Delhi at the same day. And while that may be good in the short run, it also raises questions as to how the monsoon will play out in the key months of July and August, especially August. And with the El Nino effect and all, there's a lot of uncertainty there. So I think there are a lot of headwinds, and that is reflected by proxy measures such as MREGA uptick, which have been substantial in the last few weeks, which point to some rural stress at least. But having said that, you never know, things could change. It could be a normal monsoon and momentum could be regained. But at this point in time, there's a lot of uncertainty and let's say a little bit more negatives than positives as far as staples consumption goes.
Okay, fair enough. What about the outlook then when it comes to, Mr. Singhal, when it comes to the overall volume growth? We have seen that, for the consumer side, of course, there's been some relief because there have been price cuts that have been taken. Is this likely to be a driver when it comes to volume growth?
Yeah, unfortunately, in any case, traditionally the Q2, July to September is generally a weak quarter of the 4 quarters in a year for most categories of consumer spending there. So as it is, we are entering Q2 with a somewhat subdued Q1. And with all of these weather-induced and inflation is still relatively high as far as India is concerned. So all of those, there are more headwinds, like Mr. Duggal also just said, than tailwinds. One now has to look into Q3, which is October quarter. How does it go? I think most consumer product companies and retail businesses should be and would be quite circumspect of the prospects, at least in Q2.
Why do you say that? Do you think this is just the base effect which could kick in? Will this be the base effect of inflation, delayed monsoon? Because if you are making a case that we are in for a decent Diwali and Dussehra, because 2022, the Diwali and Dussehra was not great. So why do you think this year it could be different, Mr. Singhal?
I think the reason is like this, that again, of course, while it depends also on the monsoon this year, but having said so, inflation has been moderating there. I also heard you earlier in the program, a speaker was talking about manufacturing kicking in, and there are multiple other growth drivers in the economy, which would start to reflect in improved consumer spending as well. To me, the Q2 slowdown is not fundamental to India as such. There are no fundamental factors against consumption. It is just temporary because, like I said, partly because of weather, perhaps some disruption has taken place, and partly the lag effect of higher inflation in the previous quarters. And I think this should even out by the time we reach Q3. So I remain relatively optimistic still about the October to December period compared to what it was last year.
Mr. Duggal, this entire rural versus urban, do you think this is not like a trend? It is more like a phenomenon now, whereas the bottom of the pyramid will remain under pressure. Up until now, sir, the story, Mr. Duggal, for FMCG company was reach. The more you reach, the more you distribute, the more you will grow. But do you think that's passé now? And given the economy, how it is migrating, where unorganized is moving towards organized, where digital connectivity is increasing productivity, there would be a stress on the lower layer of the income bracket?
Yes, a K-shaped recovery obviously means that the bottom of the pyramid is more stressed. And I think that we are seeing the evidence of that. The NREGA numbers indicate that, et cetera, and also rural, which is more impoverished than the urban, is facing the brunt of the demand squeeze. So there is an issue there. And but there is an upside also. There's a huge tailwind in the form of the margin expansion. And that is very robust. And I think that could be a tool which companies will have to use to trigger demand. And in my own experience in the last few months and weeks has been that the companies which have been very quick on the draw to pass on some benefits of the margin uptick to the consumer in the form of better value, higher grammage, lower prices, whatever, they have benefited. Their demand side has remained very robust. The companies which have been more conservative and captured the margins have had the top line suffer. So it's a mixed bag. I think it's a very dynamic environment. One should take advantage of the lower material costs in offering better value to the consumer. Keep the top line robust, because I think that is the key indicator in at least the consumer's staple space. And do not try to get greedy and sit on supernormal margins because that won't help in the long run.
Well, let me ask you a direct question. Let's say for the audience who wants to understand that which are the best stocks to buy within the FMCG space. Do you think for companies like, let's say, Dabur, Marico, HUL, Jyoti, companies which essentially are focused on the entire rural spread and the lower end of the pyramid, they need to reinvent themselves because the India of past will not be like the India of future?
Well, they're already doing that. I think all companies are pushing the frontier in terms of the last mile reach. So that process is happening. They're using the digital infrastructure to craft out new forms of distribution. So that's something which I think companies are doing with some difference. Nobody is lagging on that frontier. But at this point in time, I think the packaged food business is in a sweet spot. The margin upticks there would be perhaps higher than of the other parts of the discretionary space. And if I were to choose stocks, I would rather choose it in that space rather than in any other, because they're sitting on a huge margin uptick.
Mr. Singhal, being a consultant, we can talk stocks here. Mr. Duggal definitely will not tell me whether Dabur is a good buy or Marico, but you are in a position to tell me which is a good food packaging company according to you one should buy. And you've obliged our viewers in the past with your ideas when you were bullish on, let's say, Trent and other companies. So how about obliging once again?
You're referring to me or you're referring to Mr. Duggal?
Mr. Singhal.
See, it's where I can get away by saying, look, I have no understanding about stock market, how it plays around. But if I were to only use some again the behavioral pattern shifts and the income allocation shifts, let's put it this way. Mr. Duggal talked about, I've been very bullish for the longest time on packaged foods in any case. There are multiple reasons for that. We can talk about some other time about these shifts. To me, companies like ITC are in a very, very good sweet spot now because the portfolio they've built over a period of time. There were a lot of skeptics about ITC, till maybe about 2-3 years ago. But they straddle a very wide part of the consumer's kitchen, if I may say so. And I think that is one company which is poised to do, in my opinion, significantly better than what it may have done already so far. So that is just one single, like I said, I hold no stocks. I have no exposure to ITC in any way, but I have a lot of respect for the way they've built around a portfolio, sometimes being completely counterintuitive. I think they are in a good space for sure. As far as large companies are concerned, most certainly Dabur. Again, I would be always confident about Dabur. Sometimes I'm hesitant about companies which have taken a stand that we want to look only into health foods or healthy foods. If you're in the market to make money, you have to go by what the consumers want. So I don't want to refer to any particular company in this case. It's not my remit to talk about that. I'll be very skeptical about companies which are mixing up a personal viewpoint or a wokeism in some ways with what the consumers need. I stop here, Nikunj.
Okay, put you in a spot there, didn't we, Arvind? But Arvind, Sunil, both of you, thanks as always for taking the time out and joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.